Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing today? Okay, so this actually was not the video that I was going to make today. You're really lucky, because the video that I was going to make today, well, I had two videos that I was going to make today, actually. The first video that I was thinking about making today, that I've been doing extensive research and taking notes on, is about obsession with the apocalypse, because I'm completely obsessed with the apocalypse. I read all these apocalyptic books. I watch all these apocalyptic TV shows. I just finished The Leftovers last night. I love anything zombie related. So I started thinking in my head, like, why are you obsessed with this? Like, why are you obsessed with the apocalypse? What's the meaning of that? So I have done a deep dive into apocalypse obsession and what it's really about. So I was going to make that video today, and then people keep on sending me this. I'd already seen it, that the grand tour of Amy Slayton from 1,000 Pound Sisters, and that she's going to be at Fazoli's in Kentucky. Are there extra breadsticks with that? I wonder. Like, do you get a meet and greet with extra breadsticks at Fazoli's? Do you get a lemon shake-up? Don't they have those lemon shake-up things at Fazoli's? I haven't been to Fazoli's in forever. Anyway, but then I woke up and people started sending me this TikTok that Kayla Malik had put out and a bunch of other TikToks. And, you know, I don't get on TikTok that often unless it's to look up something for a video that I'm doing over here. So the last couple times I've been on TikTok, it's been to look up stuff about James Charles or Jaclyn Hill. So I got on TikTok. Let me tell you my algorithm, okay, on TikTok. I mean, I literally never get on TikTok. And my algorithm is just, it's pulling up one thing. It's just like Jaclyn Hill, Jaclyn Hill, Jaclyn Hill, James Charles, James Charles, James Charles, James Charles. It was interesting because I was like, when that's your algorithm and you only have two things, it's literally like, right here I have this podcast that Kayla Malik did, and then if I, you know, here's the next one is this James Charles thing that I think this is the not Jake Paul, what's his name? Logan Paul interview that he did where he says he likes somebody as close to 18 as possible. It's interesting, and here's Kayla Malik again. It's just like, this is my algorithm now because I never go over to TikTok, you know? So I guess the algorithm thing works. I'm still trying to figure out, like, why I, like, you know, I'm talking to my husband and I say I want a pair of striped socks, and then I get on Facebook and all I see is striped socks. Like, what is going on? Like, I can remember when I was growing up and the whole idea of, like, big brothers watching you and stuff like that. And, like, we were like, oh, no, that's never going to happen. Now you, like, say a word and it, like, shows up. So, I don't know. I will say this, though. I think it's interesting. Like, when I'm watching all these clips, so I noticed that a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race girls are coming out now and they're speaking against James Charles. When for years they've, like, used his palette. I never understood, like, if I'm an avid watcher of RuPaul's Drag Race, I never understood why so many of them felt the need to use Jeffree Star and James Charles palettes. Like, that's the only makeup palette in the entire world that they can use. And they would show it on the show and stuff like that. Now a lot of them are coming out. Their TikToks were showing up for me today, and they're like, why are we platforming a predator? Well, why were you using their makeup for years on a TV show promoting his makeup? I mean, like, that's a good question as well, right? Like, but anyway, I think it's interesting that all this stuff is coming up now. And, you know, like, very much like Jaclyn Hill, you know, Jaclyn Hill, so for those of you that do not know, that don't follow anything to do with Jaclyn Hill did this TikTok a couple days ago. I've covered it now, I think, in 2 videos, where she basically came out and said that the algorithm is screwing her, okay? And that nobody's watching her TikToks anymore, and she took 2 weeks off, and she has a lot of burnout from posting 1 TikTok a week and 1 YouTube video every 5 months. She has a lot of burnout. So, excuse her for having to take some time off after being a full-time influencer for 14 years. And so, I mean, don't you know she was on food stamps? Jaclyn Hill was on food stamps. If you didn't know, Jaclyn Hill was on food stamps. When she was working at the Mac counter, she was on food stamps. She wouldn't have been able to survive without food stamps. If I hear that lady say food stamps one more time, hey, Jaclyn Hill, there are people that are on food stamps right now, okay? There are people that need food stamps that can't even qualify for food stamps, all right? While you're trimming fuzzies off your Chanel purse. So anyway, she did this very entitled TikTok. And she came out and she said the algorithm's fucking her. That it's not like showing her girlies her videos anymore. And then the comments in the comment section were like, no, we don't relate to you anymore, is what it is, right? And so then she turned around. She couldn't even get out of bed. She's so burnt out. She's so burnt out, honey. She's so burnt out. Don't forget she was on food stamps. She's so burnt out that she couldn't even get out of bed. So she's laying in bed, and she wanted to let the girlies, that's what she calls them, she wanted to let the girlies know that she's on the Instagram. That's where she links all of her shit that you can't afford, but you apparently need. But anyway, so she knows where her girlies are at. And she wanted everybody to know that she wasn't asking for you to let her know why she wasn't relatable to you anymore. You guys missed the plot completely, okay? Like, you missed the plot completely. What you didn't get was that she wasn't asking for suggestions on what to do to improve her career. She was really just complaining, and you guys missed that. But then at the end, she turned around and she said, but I really do want to make content that you guys want. Okay, this is maddening to me as somebody that has covered Jaclyn Hill for 9+ years. Literally, people say to her all the time, we want your get readies with me. We want your makeup tutorials like you used to do when you started. She doesn't want to do that. She's made it very clear she has no interest in makeup anymore, okay? So she doesn't want to do that anymore. So then she turns around and she posts this TikTok dyeing her eyebrows with, like, hair color. And so people are like, oh, this is her trying to be relatable to the poor people. District 12. Like, we're all living in District 12. I mean, the comments... And so when I covered that, what I was saying was that it's interesting in looking back on 9.5 years of covering drama commentary, scandals that have happened to people online. It's really, like, the big things you think are going to hit people the hardest are really not the ones... It's kind of like you can kind of hear whispers and murmurs about things. I mean, I'm using that figuratively, but, like, honestly, like, you kind of hear whispers and murmurs. You'll see a little bit of this. You'll see somebody cover that. It's not like all of a sudden, like, something huge. I mean, there have been incidences where something huge has happened, but it's usually like this will happen, and then it's like a kind of a chain effect. Like, for example, Dramageddon 1, which I am old enough to remember I was one of the very first people to cover it. It was like me and like 2 other people that were covering Dramageddon 1 on YouTube at the time. I don't even think TikTok was around. And if you remember, it was that Nikita Dragun, Manny MUA, Gabriel Zamora, and who was the other person on that trip? It was Laura Lee. Yeah, they went on the NARS brand trip. And when they were on the NARS brand trip, they took a picture because they had a falling out with Jeffree Star, okay? And who Jeffree Star was like turning into the golden child. This was before Shane Dawson sainted him and all this kind of stuff, okay? And so they took this picture of, like, them flipping Jeffree Star off. And it was like they were parodying the Kardashians. And they put underneath there, bitches better without us, okay? Well, that got them a lot of attention for about 23 hours. And then Jeffree Star came out and said, fuck you people, I don't need you, you're trash, and you've all used me. The problem was that Jeffree Star at that time was somebody that people looked up to a lot. And a lot of people, like, admired and respected. And so when he came out and said, what we're not going to do is make Jeffree Star the drama of 2016, people listened. They don't so much anymore. But they listened. And so then they were all forced to come out with these videos, if you remember, like, the next day, okay? Because Jeffree Star had shamed them into oblivion. And then they all came out with all this kind of shit and whatever. Well, what happened was it very quickly turned because the people that loved Jeffree Star were like, let's dig a little bit, okay? So they started looking into things, and they found that Laura Lee had put out some racially inappropriate tweets years before, and that Manny MUA had said some things. Gabriel Zamora was flip-flopping back and forth. He was, like, in Jeffree Star's ear telling him everything that he had said, when it was Gabriel Zamora's idea from the beginning to do the picture. And then he was going back and forth with him and Manny, like, anyway, he was a flip-flopper. Nikita Dragun was so worn out from jet lag, I think she was the last one to make the apology video. And she kind of just, like, stood there and she was like, I'm so jet lagged from being on this trip, from the NARS brand trip, that, like, if you guys are upset with me, I guess I'm kind of sorry, get over it. Anyway, that was Nikita Dragun's apology. The rest of them, if you remember, it was the Laura Lee gray hoodie apology, which will forever go down, okay? And then Manny MUA got up, and that's where he talked about his social blade being in the red, but his personal life was in the green. He came back. Then he was going to make a documenting, but he never did the documentary. But at that time, okay, nobody would have ever imagined that this picture that they took on the NARS brand trip would forever, years later, still haunt them, okay? And that was really the beginning of it. That's what's always been interesting to me, like all these years later. Like when you look at Shane Dawson's cancellation is directly related to him doing The Beautiful Life of Jeffree Star. There's just no way that you can't look at that. Nobody, I think, when that Jeffree Star documentary or whatever you want to call it that he did came out and he's shining on Jeffree Star, they're opening Morphe stores, Shane Dawson's at the height of his career. I don't think anybody would have thought at that moment Shane Dawson's going to be one of the biggest cancellations, supposedly. I'm not a big believer in the word cancellation just because these people still live in $10 million homes. I mean, Shane Dawson and Ryland Adams have 2 homes. They have a home in Colorado. They have a ranch in California. I mean, it's not really a cancellation, right? I mean, it's not like they're working 2 jobs, standing on their feet for 12 hours a day. You know, it's not like, let's just be for real. It's not a real cancellation. But from a reputation point of view of having to like get online and be ashamed and embarrassed, yes, okay. From an emotional cancellation, I think, and maybe that's something we don't talk about enough is like an emotional cancellation versus a financial cancellation. I think on an emotional level, yes, it very much was a cancellation. But the thing is that I never would have seen that coming, like before then people started digging into Shane Dawson and looking into him, and they're pulling up videos from 10 years ago and things like that, right? Okay. The reason I'm bringing this up is what's interesting to me is that Jaclyn Hill comes out with this very entitled TikTok, okay? And she is saying all this stuff. Now what's interesting is I'm seeing these TikToks come up and I'm seeing all these Instagram reels where people are talking about her PPP loan that she got, where she stated that she was Native American, which we covered that 5 years ago. And people, and listen, and I'm glad it's getting attention. I will say this, I am glad that it's getting attention today because I think that TikTok's where this stuff needs to be, okay? Because these people have now moved their careers to TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, I'm on YouTube. So the people that I'm talking to have already heard it, okay? Like, I'm glad that people are covering it on TikTok right now. And then they're talking about how, like, she never owned her brand. I mean, Jen Loves Reviews covered that 5 years ago when she showed the paperwork. I've talked about it extensively. I think every drama commentary channel has talked about it. They're bringing up the lipsticks again. They're bringing up, like, every problematic thing that Jaclyn Hill has done. They're bringing up the food stamps, how she nonstop talks about these food stamps. People have even, like, gone in and looked at that. And, you know, I knew somebody back in the day that was going to do an extensive deep dive on Jaclyn Hill and had a researcher that was working for them. This researcher had watched every video of Jaclyn Hill's. This information still exists out there today. Like, I don't know that anything will ever come of this research, but I know that this research still exists today. I know that for a fact. This person has gone in and watched every video that Jaclyn Hill has ever posted and clocked, like, every lie that she has ever made. And I think some of you guys probably remember when that was going to happen because Jeffree Star stepped in and said, this is really emotionally heartbreaking to Jaclyn Hill. What it was that Jaclyn Hill knew, okay, that this person had a researcher that had gone back and clocked every single lie that Jaclyn ever made from the beginning. Not from, like, when the lipsticks came out, but from the beginning. My tripod fell right as I was getting into the meat and potatoes of things. I actually was just thinking as I was, like, turning this camera, trying to fix the tripod for the camera and turning it back on, that I thought this was going to be a very short video today. I didn't think I was going to get into the history of all of this, but I think the history is important to all of this. But anyway, what's important about this and about Jeffree Star stepping in to this Jaclyn Hill expose that was going to be done, it would have been a huge deal at that time. I think what's interesting is that piece got stopped and it never came out, but the information still exists. When we talk about why do these influencers not talk on each other, I mean, Jaclyn Hill has really never said anything negative about Jeffree Star, but that's still a favor that she owes him all these years later. I think that they were very afraid of legal getting involved and that whatever, and that they didn't want to be detrimental to somebody's mental health, which is interesting when you think about this today in the world of TikTok, right? Like, that back then that somebody could reach in and say, Jaclyn's not in a good place mentally. This is not good for her if you come out and do this expose. And drama commentary channels that had literally done hundreds of hours of research on a video stepped away and said, this is where when Jaclyn Hill and these people want to come out and they want to come for drama commentary channels or they want to come for TikTokers and stuff and say, you guys are not fair to us. That two people, one of them, you know, is still making videos today, 2 people out there that had done hundreds of hours of research, okay, on an expose on every lie of Jaclyn Hill, stepped away from the project out of concern for Jaclyn Hill's mental health and well-being. So that's important to note, okay? But what's interesting to me is that Jaclyn Hill doing this TikTok 3 to 4 days ago, right? is now exposing, and I just saw somebody actually put this TikTok up and they said, who knew that Jaclyn Hill doing this TikTok 3 days ago was going to bring up all this stuff from the past? I think it's a really valid point. It's interesting, right? Because what the things that they're bringing up are things that we covered 2016, 2017 to 2022. Well, TikTok wasn't around then, you know. I'm not on TikTok. A lot of us aren't around active on TikTok. And we're definitely not going to go over there and regurgitate the things that we were talking about in 2016 because we think that people already know that. So there's new people with new voices that are bringing, and I think that's really important. I think that those new people that are bringing, you know, validity to these sources or these stories from back in the day, that's important. Because most of us that have like watched the drama and the all go down, we know that stuff already. So it's introducing it to a whole new audience. Now this is important, okay? Because one of the things that these influencers banked on when they went over to TikTok or they stayed on YouTube but they got a bigger following on TikTok is that they banked on, like I talked about this with James Charles, they banked on getting an entirely new audience that was not informed of the past information, okay? I truly believe it's one of the reasons why Jeffree Star went to TikTok now in retrospect, because he was still getting good views on YouTube. But if you look at his last, well, not his last couple of videos, but at that time, the last couple of videos, I mean, it was right after the Shane Dawson cancellation. I think it was like a year after that. I mean, a lot of people were still coming for Jeffree Star. A lot of people were like, they were over him. People on YouTube knew, okay, who Jeffree Star really was. They had seen him. Jeffree Star was a very edited down version of himself. And I think this is interesting when you talk about like the change of Jeffree Star. People are like, he's changed so much. I actually think he's worse now on TikTok than he was when I covered him in 2016. That's just the truth. I think he is verbally nastier on TikToks. I mean, the TikToks that I see in 2016, okay, like let's just put this in perspective. We were making drama commentary videos, like I referenced this yesterday about like Patrick Star rolling his eyes at a meet and greet. We were talking about things like Jeffree and Manny releasing palettes on the same day. This was big drama, okay? People, I see this stuff come up on Facebook and Instagram all the time of these TikTok lives that Jeffree Star does. If it was today, I mean, if today was back then, I could literally make a Jeffree Star video every single day. That what people were willing to accept or willing to accept today is not what they were willing to accept in 2016. It's just the truth. This version of Jeffree Star that you see on TikTok where he's calling people names and he's, you know, just saying the most absurd things and stuff like that, he had to do a much edited down version of himself in 2016. And if you watch Jeffree Star at that time, you know that to be true, okay? There's no way he would have ever gotten a YouTube video or an Instagram story and said even 1/5 of the things that he says on TikTok today. It would have canceled him immediately. So he goes over to TikTok, okay, and he does, I think we are truly seeing who Jeffree Star really is in this moment. I think now we are seeing the most honest version of Jeffree Star we have ever seen, right? And it's worked, I think, to his advantage somewhat over on TikTok. But I think he has a completely different audience on TikTok than he does on YouTube, you know? So then that brings in the whole James Charles situation. So a couple days ago, I covered where Ethan Rhett came out, who is one of James Charles' alleged victims that has come out, and he has said that he was the 14-year-old that James Charles was talking to on Snapchat. He has now come out on this podcast, Kayla Malik's podcast, and said that James Charles sent him nude pictures. This is from the podcast. I just watched the clip that James Charles allegedly sent him nude pictures. He was in the bathroom on Snapchat when he was 14 years old. Okay, so this came out I think about a week ago now. I just actually looked at his TikTok and he posted a thing saying he was taking some time off. Ethan was taking some time off online. He appreciated the support and everything like that. Okay, so he apparently did this podcast with Kayla Malik. Well, Kayla Malik is the victim of DV from her boyfriend. She was on TikTok talking about it. Her abuser went to jail, and James Charles was friends, okay, with her abuser and had to make the TikTok. This is interesting to me because when you look at the connection of things that ultimately lead to somebody's huge cancellation, like I said, in looking back, it's never the things that you think it's going to be. I remember when the Kayla Malik thing came out, and I was kind of like James Charles, he rarely ever comes out and addresses anything. Like, he thinks he's above it, and I think it's not even just that he thinks he's above it. At this point, there are so many scandals and allegations involving James Charles that for him to address every allegation would just bring constant attention to the fact that he is just fucking up, making horrendous choices, and is just really inherently not a good person on a regular basis. He can't have that out there. So he very wisely, okay, and I say that, I use that word appropriately, he very wisely, from a business point of view, picks and chooses what he will address. When he came out, okay, and he addressed the Kayla Malik situation and said that he felt really bad and that, I mean, he did a 5-minute TikTok about it. I covered it at the time and said that, you know, like he didn't know and blah, 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 whatever. And then Kayla came out and said that he had, that, you know, her ex was at James's house and James 100% knew. And then these text messages came out. It kind of floated over a little bit, okay? So when I saw that Kayla Malik was speaking about this, I thought this was interesting because the only person that's gotten James Charles to speak about anything in the last couple years is Kayla Malik. And I thought, this is interesting, okay? Now, I am somebody that I'm sure just to a lot of people seems like a shit-talking gossip tea channel, and that's what I am. I own that all day long. I'm not a journalist, nothing like that, okay? I did have a true crime book club for several years, for like 6 years, okay? And I do follow patterns with things. And one thing that's interesting to me is that the overall question that people keep on asking about James Charles is, why does he have a platform? Well, I have a lot of feelings about why James Charles has a platform. We'll get to that in just a second. And then you guys can let me know what you think in the comment section below. But what I think about the whole idea of cancellation, because I think the main question that people keep on asking is, number one, why does he have a platform? Which leads to the question, why has James Charles not had a cancellation like some of these other people have? In all honesty, James Charles had a cancellation with the Bi Sisters video by Toddy Westbrook, but that cancellation lasted all of like 2 days. He lost 3 million subscribers and then he gained 3 million subscribers, okay? So what's interesting to me is, you look at Jeffree Star. Jeffree Star has had multiple, cancellations at this point. Emotional cancellations. Shane Dawson, I think, had probably one of the worst ones. Colleen Ballinger has had a huge one, okay? And you look at all this kind of stuff, and it's like, Colleen Ballinger's is interesting to me, right? Because Colleen Ballinger's is probably the most recent one. Colleen Ballinger's cancellation, if you want to call it that, came out, those allegations came out at a time that TikTok existed. I am not sure that if James Charles, if his allegations came out at a time that TikTok was as prominent as it is today, I'm not sure that James Charles would still have a career today. I think that at that time, okay, that his main audience was 12 to 20-year-olds. I think had they gotten a hold of all these allegations and TikTokers that were commentary TikTokers online were making these videos, I think the trend would have been like, fuck you, James Charles. I think that would have been the trend. And I think James Charles would have gotten canceled over that. I really, really do. But I think that when you look at how things change over time, what James Charles did was, and it was a lot of timing, okay? He was on YouTube at that time, but he was also on TikTok. He kind of started going to TikTok, but what he did was he reinvented his career. He knew he had already lost that age group. I think most people at that point that were like 18 to 25 and older that had watched James Charles for a long time, I mean, most of those people have had friends that this has happened to. It's happened to them themselves. I don't think they could look away from it. And to be honest with you, I don't really think they were that interested in James Charles content anymore, okay? It wasn't like they were sitting in a room playing Roblox or whatever. So I think a lot of them faded out anyway. So James Charles got a younger audience. Well, that audience didn't have any clue what was going on with James Charles, which is very evident because when you read a lot of the comments, it's a lot of people defending James Charles. What you don't know is when you don't see a profile on somebody's TikTok, you can kind of tell how they speak. But a lot of these people defending James Charles are probably 12, 13, 14, 15, okay? That are defending James Charles. That don't understand the severity of the allegations, that don't understand the history of James Charles, that don't understand all this kind of stuff. That's part of the problem, okay, is that James Charles continues to reinvent his audience. So I think, number one of the things that should probably be mentioned is, I don't know, maybe parents need to look in a little bit, and I'm not blaming this on parents, but like maybe have conversations with your kids about James Charles, okay? If you're watching this and you have kids, be like, do you know who James Charles is? What do you think about James Charles? Blah, 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 whatever. Or whoever out there is problematic, right? Like, I grew up in a generation where we couldn't watch R-rated movies. My parents didn't really censor a whole lot, but like, I would sit down and have a conversation with my parents about a movie that I wanted to see or a movie that was on or something like that. Like, maybe we need to be having, I don't know, more conversations about this. You know, my nephews are at the 13 and 10, and they're not allowed to have TikTok. They get on the reels and stuff like that, and I ask them about people that they watch and whatever, and that, like, I don't even know the people they watch. They're like gaming people and all this kind of stuff, but like their mom asks them a lot of questions about that. And I'm not like saying she's the greatest person in the world and all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying, like, I don't know, maybe we need to be having more conversations about that or whatever. And I'm not putting this on the parents, okay? I'm not putting this on the parents at all. But I think when you have a 12-year-old defending a 25-year-old, okay, there's a power differential there that James Charles is very fully aware of. And to some degree, he is using those 12-year-olds that are unaware of the problematic behavior of James Charles. They're unaware of the severity of that. Most of them should never even have to understand what that is to begin with. This is the problem. We don't want to have conversations with our children that are that young because we don't think they should be exposed to those kinds of things, except for that every single day they're getting online being exposed to somebody that has allegations of that, right? I remember back in the day, after the allegations came out, that James Charles would post these videos of dads buying their daughters James Charles makeup. And why? Because the dads just didn't know. They just didn't know. And we can live in a world where we can say, well, maybe they needed to do this, maybe they needed to do the research. I don't know. To me, there's so many issues across the board. And like I said, I am not blaming this on parents. I'm just saying, maybe we need to open conversations. For me, it's very much like, you know, it's very similar to me because I've been sober for 30 plus years. And when people will say to me, at what point do you enter into the conversation, like friends of mine that have kids, you talk about addiction. I'm like, kids understand it already. You know, I grew up in an alcoholic home. My mother, I remember probably clearer than most other people do. I knew when my mom had drank too much. I don't know that I knew the words to use with it. You know, and I'm glad that people dumbed it down for me and had conversations with me about it, kid-appropriate conversations. But yeah, I knew that my mom, when she drank, I knew she acted a different way. Kids understand a lot more than we think that they do. And so to just not have those conversations and let a kid just go sit in their room and look at this guy that's problematic as hell, he's getting a whole new audience, and he's going to continue to do that until he ages out to the point that he can't do that anymore, right? So that's part of the problem, is that James Charles has an entirely new audience of people that are defending him that don't know the history of James Charles. And to be really honest with you, I don't know that it matters to that audience that if they, if a 12 or a 14-year-old is watching a James Charles TikTok, and then the next TikTok that comes up is a commentary channel talking about how bad of a person James Charles is, I don't know that that's really going to affect the mind of a 12-year-old anyway. So when people want to ask why James Charles still has a platform, that's part of the reason why, okay? James Charles' audience is very young. He knows that. He banks on it, okay? So that's the first part. But, you know, when you look at the whole idea of a cancellation and why cancellations occur and things like that. Like I said, historically, it starts from something very, very small, okay? Now, James Charles has multiple allegations. Ethan Rhett coming out and sharing a story all these years later, what's interesting to me is I went back and I watched him, and he said that one of the reasons why he didn't share at that time was that it was a lot of pressure that he had, and that he felt like that he just wanted it to go away, okay? That he was talking to attorneys, he was talking to the police, things like that. And it was interesting because I got a comment on that video, and I don't know if people didn't watch the things or hear what he said, but people were like, well, why wouldn't his dad be involved? His dad's name is on the paperwork, okay? His dad's name is fully on the paperwork. You can look and see it. He talked about his dad being with him talking to the attorneys. It wasn't like at 14 he was doing this on his own. His dad was involved in it. It's legit. Go look it up, okay? So anyway, and I think this whole idea of like victim shaming anyway, to me is just, that is a lot for me. So anyway, so when I went back and I looked at it, he says in there that at that time, like he just wanted it all to go away, so he just kind of dropped it. And I said in there, I use, you know, like an analogy that's, no, it's not the same thing at all that I had gone through, but where I had like stalkers and haters online, still do. And, there was a point for me where I just was like, I just don't want to deal with it anymore. I just don't want to address it. And my therapist suggested to me that the only control I had over the situation, because I can't control other people or their actions, is that how I react or how I respond to it. And so I suggested in that video that maybe Ethan, his only sense of control that he had over this James Charles situation was how he was going to react to it. And at that time, because people are like, well, why didn't you do something about it then? That's victim shaming, okay? His way to respond to it was to say, you know what, I don't want to do anything with this right now. But if you go, and I think that that's a fair statement. I think that might be in that moment the only piece of control he felt like he had, right? And I mean, this is where we don't understand victimology a lot, okay? Or we don't even try to understand it. It's just about, this is where social media has got us so fucked up, because it's like, who's right and who's wrong, instead of really trying to understand stuff. And like, this brings me back to the whole parent thing. Like, I want to make this very, very clear. I'm not blaming parents in any way. I'm just saying, I think this is a good way to open a door to further conversations, to have further conversations with our kids or our family members or whatever, or people that don't know, and say, are you aware of this? It's not blaming anybody or any of that kind of stuff. Just to make that clear. But with him, I understand that, okay? I understand that maybe your only sense of control that you felt like you had in that moment was to say, I'm not going to do anything about it. But if you go back and you watch his recent TikToks, what he says is, but that's changed, and I'm ready to do something. And I don't know if he means legally or not. I mean, he could still do something legally with this. So I don't know if he means legally or not. I don't know if this is going to be addressed on the podcast. I have no clue, okay? And people are going to be like, well, why would he go on Kayla Malik? Kayla Malik's giving him a voice. She's allowing him to speak, okay? At least somebody is. Thank God, right? And so the other thing is that when you go back and you look at, like, because I'm seeing a lot of people post James Charles taking accountability video, which James Charles has deleted off of YouTube. I said this in my video the other day, and I was kind of surprised that a couple people were like, did he really delete that video? This is where we don't know the history. James Charles made a video called Holding Myself Accountable, okay? In the video, he apologizes to his victims. He even says one of them at the time was 14, okay? He's talking about Ethan Rhett. He, in that video, it's been re-uploaded to YouTube. You can go watch it. It's all over TikTok right now. People are re-uploading it, okay? And in that video, he apologizes to his victims. Then he took the video down. Then he came back in another video called Open Conversation, and he blamed it on a drama commentary channel, Def Noodles. Def Noodles was covering every allegation at the time, false or true or otherwise. And so he said all these made-up stories because his commentary channel covered, so you don't know really which ones. What James Charles did was he deferred to the fake allegations, because a lot of allegations were coming out at that time, right? So that's what he did to get himself out of it. Then he goes on the Logan Paul podcast. I believe that was after that. And he says, or I think that was actually, yeah, I think that was after that. I don't know. But anyway, he said that he's very mature. He's like a 40-year-old, but he wants to date somebody that looks as close to 18 as possible. Okay. There's all this stuff that's already out there. Well, what's happening now is because of Ethan Rhett coming out and speaking, all these people are bringing up this stuff again. So things that we knew 8 years ago, okay? I mean, I've been covering James Charles since the Ebola thing, the tweet that he made about Ebola. You know, all the stuff that's happened through the years with James Charles, like now it's coming back to light. And it's like, it's like this snowball effect. It's like boom, 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 boom. I like scrolled through TikTok today. And like I said, I never get on TikTok. I have never seen this Holding Myself Accountable video so many times come across my TikTok. And I think that this is the thing, is that I think people, and when I was reading the comments, a lot of people are like defending James Charles. I'm like, how, like in the world that we live in, okay, of the P. Diddy's and the Bill Cosby's and I mean, the Epsteins and all this, how do you like get on there and defend somebody that apologized to their minor children victims, then took the fucking video down? Like, how do you even justify that in your head, okay? Like, it has to be kids that don't understand the implications of it. That's all I can think. And James Charles has been bankrolling on this because James Charles knew, okay? He knew that the day was going to come that all this was going to come rolling back. James Charles from day one has been somebody that has been very business savvy and smart, okay? He only cares about the money. It's why he did this is the thing. The other thing that's okay, anyway, from the very beginning, he knew this day was going to come where something was going to happen and all this stuff was going to roll out on TikTok, okay? It's why he changed his entire audience. I mean, I knew it was to reinvent an audience, but now he's got a much younger audience that defends him. It's not going to hurt him because they don't really understand the implications of it. And if they do understand the implications, they don't care because James Charles is just some superstar to them anyway, right? Okay, so I'm watching all this go down, and, you know, I'm thinking back on, like, the article that he did in Cosmopolitan called Please Uncancel Me. And in that article, they address the grooming allegations. They address the predatorial behavior. They even say that one of the victims apologized to James Charles, victim shaming the victim and saying that it was his fault, okay, when that victim was much younger at that time. What's interesting to me about this is that in that article, the article's about James Charles, it's an interview about James Charles. they say James Charles, they say the grooming thing. Why am every TikTok that I'm watching, Kayla Malik involved, they won't even say his name. The RuPaul's Drag Race girls, they won't say James Charles' name. Is there like a fear that if you say James Charles on TikTok with these allegations that your TikTok will get banned? Like, is that a thing that TikTok is protecting James Charles? I don't know. I'm not on TikTok like that. But every one of these that I watch, if you go in here and you watch, here, let's look at Kayla Malik's thing really quick. Hold on a second. I had it all pulled up here. Here it is. Kayla Malik. Okay. So Kayla Malik put out, here we're just going to watch it right here. Okay. So Kayla Malik put up this TikTok.
Did he do it? You know, did this happen? No, it did. It did. We just talked to Ethan, who is currently sharing a story online about what did to him when he was 14. And,
she goes on to say that they're going to have him on the podcast. The podcast has already been filmed because there's clips of it online. But what's interesting to me is she says, is there a reason why we can't say James Charles' name in regards to these allegations? Is James Charles that protected? I'm confused about this. James Charles made a video of his own called Holding Myself Accountable. In 2 videos, he has talked. In the open conversation video, which still exists on his channel. In 2 videos, James Charles himself talked about allegations of predatory sexual misconduct. Why on TikTok can nobody say that? I watch these RuPaul's Drag Race girls, they won't even say his name on there. They say, you know what we're talking about, why does he still have a platform? Why James Charles? James Charles, like, you want to talk about power differential, James Charles can get in a TikTok, he can get in a video, and he can address these things, and make whatever narrative he wants to make up about it, but other people can't comment on it. Ethan Rhett's, his TikToks got taken down and then put back up of him talking about it. So James Charles can run whatever narrative he wants to. This is why James Charles still has a platform, okay? You know, it's interesting to me because I was going in and I was looking at James Charles, you know, for years, you know, people talk about, well, you shouldn't ban this person or you shouldn't ban that person for following, you know, James Charles, or you shouldn't, this company shouldn't be held accountable, whatever, like the GLAAD Awards, like this, like whatever, for platforming James Charles. What's interesting about that, right? And I've always kind of felt weird about that, you know, like, I remember years ago, somebody used the word predator protector, then I used it in a video, and then I was like, everybody thought that I came up with it. I think it was Marlene Estelle that came up with the word. But anyway, it's like, I got kind of like a bad name for calling out people that were like supporting James Charles, and people are like, you shouldn't do that, and blah, 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 whatever. So I go over to James Charles, hold on a second. I go over to James Charles TikTok, right? And he's got this TikTok up talking about Dunkin' Donuts. Here, I just want to see this for a second. Hold on a second, okay?
Hi, this is a message for the Dunkin' corporate team. Whoever designed your guys' coffee ordering system on delivery apps deserves to be tied up in the middle of the street and then run over with a vehicle multiple times. I don't know why you people decided to make it literally as complicated as like fucking decoding the Da Vinci fucking code. I just want a medium caramel iced coffee with cream and sugar. That is what I used to get every single morning before school. I love it, and I've been trying to order this.
So James Charles, let me make this clear if I understand this, okay? James Charles can get on TikTok. Let me look up how many people he has on TikTok. So James Charles can get on TikTok with 1.5 billion likes and 40.7 million followers. And to his 40 plus million followers, okay, he can say something negative about Dunkin' Donuts and that whoever designed this should be fired, okay? But we shouldn't hold James Charles accountable or ask the GLAAD Awards why they're platforming him, or why RuPaul's Drag Race is having him in their audience, or why RuPaul's Drag Race gals are using his makeup, or why people are collabing with him. We don't have the right to ask those questions, but James Charles can get in a thing that to his followers, they might be like, fuck Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not going to Dunkin' Donuts anymore, because he's pissed about how he got his coffee. To 40 million people. I'm not talking about, I do reviews, honest reviews, and they might get 1,000. I'm talking about 40 million people, okay? I mean, that could really damage a company. But then people have an issue with anybody asking any questions, you know? This is one of the reasons why James Charles has a platform, okay? Is because people don't want to stop using services and things that endorse James Charles, okay? And we live in a world of economy. When I made the Jaclyn Hill video, the comments are overflowing over there with Jaclyn. The reason we don't relate to your Chanel Birkin lifestyle anymore, okay, is because we can't afford groceries. We can't afford this. We can't afford that, okay? Until people stop supporting and endorsing the people that support and endorse James Charles, and I'm not telling you to do that, do whatever you want to do, but I'm just calling it out as it is, okay? James Charles just flew his entire family on a first-class trip, rented an Airbnb, was on a boat in Australia, okay? While people that have bought his makeup are still supporting him when he has predatory allegations, okay? Like, until people start taking a stand and asking, like, the GLAAD Awards, okay? As a gay man, I will never donate any money to the GLAAD Awards as long as James Charles is still there. I just won't, okay? As long as James Charles is showing up to GLAAD events, I'm done with that organization. I will donate my money to organizations that are not going to have a predator on their platform. There's just no reason for me to. There are enough charitable organizations out there that I don't have to do that, okay? Quite frankly, I don't care, like, what he does at this point. The fact that James Charles doesn't feel like he needs to address this and is posting one TikTok after another is part of the problem. People ask why James Charles has a platform to this day. Number one, because people don't understand the information that happened from 2016 to 2020. A lot of those people have faded out. They don't watch drama commentary anymore. They don't watch beauty information, all that kind of stuff. So people have forgotten a lot of the original stuff, number one. Number two, the reason why he still has a platform is because he has a much younger audience that doesn't really give a shit, okay? They don't really care about that. And like I said, it's not that they don't care, okay? It's if you have, let's say, a 12-year-old and you want to have a real serious conversation. Most people don't even want to have a conversation with a 14-year-old about, do you know what it means to have nudes sent to you on Snapchat? Most parents don't even want to have that conversation with their child. But it happened to a 14-year-old, okay? So we're not having conversations with the people that are defending James Charles because they don't even understand the implications. It's not their fault. They don't understand the severity of the implications unless it's happened to them. They don't get it, okay? And we don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen to those kids so they have to understand it. I don't want that to happen to them. Number two, that's the second reason, okay, is that James Charles continues to reinvent his audience over and over and over again. Number three is, until there is something that has happened where people start holding James Charles to the fire and people are like, no, I'm done. Because people will say to me, well, as long as you keep on talking about him, people are going to watch him. I'm a drama commentary channel that might get, let's just say if I got 1 million views a video, I'm bringing awareness to the issue, okay? I'm not getting, me making a video talking about James Charles as an alleged predator is not getting him views. People aren't being like, ooh, I want to go watch James Charles because he's an alleged predator. That's not getting him a lot of views, okay? Me covering it. It's bringing awareness to the issue. But until people are fully aware of how problematic he is, this is the thing. And I said this with Kayla Malik. I said, this might be the thing that brings James Charles down. And at that time, people were like, no, this won't be the thing that James Charles brings down. And I don't ever want to be somebody that's like, oh, I was right about this. What I didn't see coming at that time was because when you read the comments on here, people are like, when you read the comments on Kayla Malik's, her TikTok story, a lot of people are like kind of giving her a hard time on here, okay? And they're saying stuff on here. And like somebody said, if you knew this so long ago, why did you collab with him? And she responds and says, it's insane how some people immediately shift the blame off of him. When we collaborate, oh my God, I was at the 30-minute mark while I was reading her comment. I didn't even realize it. So let me go back. Okay. She says, she's responding to a lot of people that are clapping back at her. And she says, it's insane how some people immediately shift the blame off him. When we collaborated, I had just turned 18 and should have looked into him more. That's what she says in there that's important. I should have looked into him more. There's a reason I distanced myself, but it's not fair to sit here and almost make what he did not that bad just because I had filmed with him when I was 18. There's obviously a way greater evil here, okay? Now, I have been accused for years of demanding explanations from people. And Kayla Malik, in one paragraph in a TikTok comment, showed how easy it is, okay? She said, I should have looked into him more. I didn't know. I was 18. I should have looked into him more. I think that's pretty understandable, you know? I don't... And this situation is, again, we're you know, and she's exactly right. We're wanting to shift blame onto somebody, right? I would rather have people, in all honesty, because I think that this is important. I would rather have people that were siding with James Charles and knew him come out now and say, yeah, I stood by him for a long time and I shouldn't have. And I shouldn't have. And the more I look into it and I made excuses for James Charles and it was fucked up and I shouldn't have. And you know what? And I need to speak about this. I think that speaks volumes to people that don't know James Charles. Because for a person to come out and kind of like, you know, just own it for a little bit and be like, yeah, it was fucked up. And I should have looked into him more and I didn't. Kayla Malik was young, okay? But there's a lot of people that were not that young that stood, and I'm not just talking about one, I'm talking about 20, okay? That stood by James Charles, that still stand by James Charles. If some of those people came out and said, okay, and were forced into a position because, let's just say this gets so big and all this stuff starts happening that they are like, I'm distancing myself from James Charles. If 2 or 3 of them come out, I mean, I truly believe that one of the reasons why the cancellation with Colleen Ballinger happened was everybody started distancing themselves. Okay, the Trisha Paytas stuff came out, so she was done with her. Then Joey Graceffa, her best friend, he was done with her. It was the people that surrounded Colleen Ballinger. If those people were still there defending Colleen Ballinger wouldn't have the cancellation that she had. One of the reasons why James Charles still has a platform is because he has a lot of people kissing his ass. If people that knew James Charles came out and said, you know what, I did support him for a long time, and maybe I shouldn't have, and it was fucked up that I did, and I wish I hadn't, but you learn as you grow. You know, I think that would really help the situation a lot. But when you look underneath here at the comments, it's interesting. Somebody said this information has been out for years. I mean, people are saying, I mean, a lot of people are oh my God, people are guessing who it is, but they're like, no. A lot of people are asking her, why did she do the collab? And she's actually responding to some of them in here. Somebody said, this information has been out for years. If you actually believed him, why would you collab with James? She said, I wish I never did. But I will say I saw hardcore evidence this past weekend. When we interviewed Ethan, there was obviously a greater evil here. And people are going back and forth with this. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out. You know, and a lot of people are saying, oh, you're just talking about this because you're pissed about James being friends with your ex and whatever. I don't know that I feel like she needed to enter the conversation. I think Kayla Malik was doing okay on her own. But I do think that more people are going to come out and talk about it. And I think it's going to be from interesting sources. Like, I know that Jeffree Star said some things. I mean, he said things for years. I don't think, to be honest with you, Jeffree Star is really the source to talk about it. I don't think people really care. Plus, like, you know, Jeffree Star has been, like, gatekeeping information of his own for years on James Charles. For him to come out and, I mean, people will say, well, why didn't you come out with this years ago? He should have come out with it years ago if he really thinks that James Charles is that bad of a person, I guess. I don't know. But I think it'll be interesting to see if this explodes into something big. You know, I mean, if legal gets involved, if this gets bigger than it already is, which I'm kind of feeling like it might. If it does, and James Charles just keeps on posting as usual, I think there are going to be some people that are going to come out and say, I just can't stand by and continue to support James Charles anymore. I think that will be the beginning of the end of James Charles, if that happens. Because then I think that the people that the other kids look up to, that James has collabed with, when they're like, no, we don't want anything to do with James either. I mean, people kind of forget Charli D'Amelio. Charli D'Amelio doesn't really have anything to do with James Charles anymore. If other people like that those kids look up to as well are like, I'm done with James Charles, that might be what ends James Charles' career. You know? The people who are asking why James Charles still has a platform are the people that were there originally, okay? Who have stopped following him. It's the people that are asking, they're not the ones that are following him now. They adore him. They love him. So if people around him now spoke out and said, no, I don't want anything to do with James Charles anymore, and yeah, like I woke up, I think they don't know how to speak out against it. That's the problem. We can all own our truth and just say, you know what, I fucked up. I shouldn't have, but I did. And now I need to do the right thing. It's okay, you know? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let me know in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.